Okay. You have no reason to think it did not come from you?
Correct.
Okay. And you mentioned in there that there was, you stated thanks, and then there's a redacted individual. I had asked about Mondays because there is a researcher at the county who is eventually going to be going up to PP Pasadena to collect specimens, but wanted something short-term until Pasadena could get their act together. And this was September 18th, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware whether a researcher at the county collected specimens at PP Pasadena?
To the best of my recollection, this was a preliminary conversation, and this particular researcher did not go to Pasadena or LA.
And did any other researchers go to PPLA to collect specimens?
Not as far as I am aware.
And I should want to ask more broadly.
Can I just, let me,
sure.
I'd like to amend that to say there is a difference between tissue collection for a big organization, that they collect the tissue procurement organization, and a specific research project. Now, we may in fact have been involved in specific research projects, but that's a whole different category from fetal tissue donation.
Okay. And when you say that about research projects, would those research projects have involved fetal tissue, or did they involve something else?
Usually blood samples, but I can't answer definitively.
Okay. But just to be clear, though, the research projects to which you're referring did not involve fetal tissue.
They may have involved placental tissue. So.
Interesting. Okay. And how would those projects, at PPLA, who would have worked with the researchers to set up their research project?
Myself.
Okay. And then what would anyone else, what approvals would be necessary to start a research project at PPLA with one of these researchers?
Objection. It's an incomplete hypothetical. It lacks foundation. I don't believe the witness has actually testified that this occurred, but you can answer.
Okay. Well, let's set our foundation properly. While you were medical director at PPLA, did you approve any research projects from outside researchers? And by outside, I mean outside of PPLA.
Yes.
Okay. And what was the nature of those research projects?
They covered a gamut from collecting swabs for gonorrhea, antibiotic resistance, a number of studies of that nature.
Okay. And you'd also mentioned maternal blood samples. Would that be part of the research?
Objection vague.
One of the research projects may have involved maternal blood. Is that correct?
May.
Okay. And then one or more of the research projects would have involved placental material. Is that correct?
I think that we were discussing it, but I can't remember whether it actually came to fruition.
Okay. And where would these research projects, what form of approval would the research, you had said you approved the research projects, correct?
Let me clarify.
Sure.
I would be the point person. I would organize the things. I would look at the contracts, but final approval for research rested with the research department at PPFA, which is different from the department that gave waivers for things. So the...
And I believe, the final approval for research would lie with the research department at PPLA.
PPFA.
Okay.
PPFA, we did not have a research department. We wanted one. But the final approval, the CEO had to sign off on a research project at PPLA. And the research division at PPFA had to sign off on a research project because they wanted to be sure that we were dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Okay.
So, Counsel, I want to let you get to the end of this line of questioning, but
Sure.
then I think it's probably a good
Oh,
time
yeah,
for a
sure.
break.
We'll break for lunch. Yeah. And so, and then, just to be clear, there is a research department at PPFA.
Yes.
Okay, and each research project being considered at PPLA had to be approved by the PPFA research department.
Objection vague.
Correct.
Okay. And then you had mentioned there may have been a project involving placental material, but you aren't sure if there was one?
No, I was there 15 years or something, and there is potential swimming in here that we may have been involved in placenta, but I really can't remember.
Okay. And, what records would have been kept of the research projects that were approved at PPLA?
I certainly kept records, but I don't know to have them.
Okay. And so PPLA would have those records potentially?
Objection lacks foundation, calls for speculation.
I can't answer for what PPLA did with my files.
And was there anyone else involved in the research approval process besides yourself, the CEO, and the PPFA research department?
Research at PPLA was a collaborative effort. So if the nurses were going to be involved in having to get cervical swabs, then the lead clinician would have to sign off on her staff doing that. If the IT department was going to be involved because we wanted to adjust the medical record to show something on the EHR that said this project was, the patient took part in the XYZ project, then IT, it's not just me, it's a whole collection of people.
Sure. And then did you have individuals at PPLA who had research in their job duties?
I seem to recall that we did toward the end of my time there. We possibly were trying to get a research program going, and we had a person who, at least part of their time, was dedicated to research.
Okay. And one of the, it's my understanding that potentially Dr. Nucatola's title may have been Associate Medical Director for Research.
Yes.
Okay. And what is she this person that you were referring to, or is that a different person?
A different person.
Okay.
An assistant level person.
Okay. And then just so that I'm clear then, with Dr. Nucatola being the Associate Medical Director for Research, what duties did she have in relation to research projects?
Objection calls for speculation, if you know.
I would have to look at her job description from PPLA to remind me, but basically she was our point person for research projects.
Okay. And so would she present the research projects to you for approval?
Objection, incomplete hypothetical, lacks foundation.
Well, if she's the point person for research, what do you mean by point person?
Yes, she would look for projects. She was working with the residents and fellows to do some data collection projects. She and I worked collaboratively together. If she and I together decided that a project was something we wanted to do, then we would call on the other persons who controlled resources at PPLA to say, can we have resource to do this study?
And then one last on this topic for now. When you would apply to PPFA research, so PPFA research department, would you send what would you send to PPFA research department in order to get an approval from them?
The outline of the research, when we plan to start, signature of the CEO, the consent forms, the persons we wish to enroll. We're going to do male patients who are having vasectomies. We're going to do female patients with a certain age group. So all the details of the proposed research project would go to PPFA.
And just so that I'm clear, those research projects may have included projects that involved fetal tissue in some way.
Objection. That misstates testimony.
I cannot remember.
Okay. Oh, fair enough. Let's break for lunch.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Council, as we discussed, there is a 2 o'clock hearing with Judge Ryu that I don't have anyone else to cover for me. If we take an hour lunch, that'll take us to 2:30, and I hope that that will coincide with the end of Judge Ryu's hearing. I know we don't want to be here later than necessary, but I would ask that we try to wait until I get back, because I have a very keen interest on this line of questioning. I anticipate asking questions myself, and if I'm here for this questioning, then it'll be less likely that I'll ask duplicative questions.